Hey everybody, I'm excited to jump into our next portfolio thesis video interview. I'm excited to have Isaac Health, one of our healthcare portfolio companies. We have with us two of the founders, executives from the company, Julius and Joel. And I'll first share the high-level thesis of what we liked about Isaac Health, and then we're going to kind of dive into the company. But Isaac Health, not to give away the elevator pitch, but to kind of say, whenever we're looking at making an investment in a company, we're looking at a few core things. We're looking around market size being significant. And I think one of the things that we do as a fund is every quarter, we kind of give a prize internally of who can identify some of the largest market size potentials as a generalist fund that we can even invest in. And two, looking at companies that have not only identified some of the largest market size opportunities, but also have really clever approaches, even more so than innovative technology, but really smart approaches. And I think Isaac Health has done a phenomenal job on both of those fronts. Isaac Health is focusing on a kind of a telehealth solution for doing the diagnostics of and treatment of dementia. And just from a high level, on the market size, when you think of the largest markets in the world in healthcare, dementia is one of those unfortunate things that, it's like 50% of us or so are going to die with dementia. And so from from a pure just numbers perspective, this is one of the largest healthcare challenges that humans have over almost any other healthcare issue that you can have. And so dementia oftentimes pops up as one of the biggest market opportunities. To kind of overlay that with a rise of a new standard of care and new approach to solving one of the biggest problems through a telehealth approach that can be done both from a diagnostics perspective as well as a treatment perspective. And while there's a number of companies that are working on trying to solve dementia from a medical perspective, it's something that the vast majority of people are not being diagnosed that have it. So there's a huge number of people that should be diagnosed to have it, but the challenge that Isaac Health that really got us was that there's this huge wait time to actually get diagnosed. And so being able to solve that at scale by having their own kind of proprietary network of people that can do the diagnosis really unlocks the opportunity that hasn't been able to be unlocked. So that was kind of what initially got us quite interested in the play on the market size. And then in terms of the approach to kind of ramp up revenues really quickly, I remember when we were diving in on the due diligence, core thing was by the channel strategy that you guys have with insurers, you have the capability of doing these pilots that then can ramp up relatively quickly to pretty meaningful amount of revenues with a relatively small number of insurers. And so companies that are going after huge markets that can also ramp up revenues in short period of times are the best ingredients for an amazing VC deal. So just as a kind of a opener for some of the highlights that we liked about Isaac Health. But I guess to kick things off, I guess Julius and Joel, maybe first would be great to kind of hear a quick background on yourselves. And I guess after kind of sharing a little bit on the background side, share a little bit more on the details around how you guys think of your true target market, and that it's certainly initially people that are potentially have dementia, but how do you guys go about really defining size of market with this type of approach for telehealth?
Thank you for the great introduction. As a brief introduction, I'm Julius. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Isaac Health. Started off in medicine, discovered my passion for the dementia and brain health space very early because I experienced it in my own family with my grandmother who had sort of an atypical form of dementia, and it took us several years to actually identify what was going on and to put her in touch with the right resources. And by that time, it was almost a little bit too late. So that's sort of what got me excited in this space. And I actually did my PhD in dementia research coming out of medical school. And then later on, wanted to scale up my impact by going to McKinsey and spending 7.5 years there, working on value-based care with health systems and payers, and then also digital health solutions during the pandemic. And this is really sort of for me, Isaac Health is combining all these passions.
I'm Joel Salinas, a behavioral neurologist. I've been working in the space in various capacities over the last 20 years, helping patients and families really understand kind of what's going on with the changes they're experiencing and navigating the health system altogether. And through the clinical training I did at Mass General, Brigham Women's Hospital, helping to develop the mental neurology service there, helping to develop the Center for Brain Health at Mass General, and then finally making my way to NYU Langone. I think the thing that kept on kind of appearing as I would work with patients over and over again was specifically the point that you alluded to before about wait times. They would always say, "You have no idea how long it took for us to see you," and whenever I hear that, that would be just so heartbreaking, knowing that that's just not timely access to care. And there's so much that can be done for people who are beginning to experience these changes. And the earlier you intervene, the better the impact that you can have over the long term. So really earlier detection, earlier diagnosis, earlier treatment really matters. And, there really wasn't anything kind of available in the market right now. This is kind of what I bet really coming to.
No, thank you for that. I guess in diving in on the market, it's amazing. I guess, again, the dementia challenge is, again, one of the biggest challenges that humans have, given just the high prevalence that people, will 50% or more will get it as they get older. And so it's not necessarily something that necessarily causes death, but something that you die with. And obviously we're working on a number of different treatments that can be done from call it a genetic or biological perspective. And all those things can also be incorporated into the approach that Isaac Health is taking. But I remember the key thing that you guys were doing that was fascinating is it's not only a big market, but it's a big market that has a challenge of the number of available doctors that can actually diagnose dementia at all. And in fact, while it's a huge market, you have these wait times that are 3, 6, 12 months, depending on the circumstance. And so, as a VC, we love finding companies that are going after big markets, but it's even better when you find companies that can actually unlock a big market in a way that it wasn't even accessible before, because it's like big, but it's like, how do I actually start penetrating it? And you need to do that by having an effective methodology. And so your approach was pretty fascinating. So can you share a little bit about the target market that you're going after and kind of the unique approach that you're taking to kind of unlock that market by building out this network of doctors or individuals that are able to effectively do the diagnosis, and how you went about that strategy to doing something that was really not possible before?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I mean, the market that we're going after is the market for the diagnosis and treatment of brain health conditions. And it's a $230 billion market in the US alone. We estimate that the international market is probably 3 times as big. So we are talking indeed about a very big market that we're addressing here. And this does not include the sort of lost revenue from care, and it also doesn't include pharmaceutical treatment. So this is just medical diagnosis and treatment. And the dementia obviously is a big proportion of this market size. And we assume that obviously we're addressing the part of the market that is not yet diagnosed, and that is sort of accessible through telehealth to a large extent, even if that means that we have to send someone like a home health aide into someone's home. And that market that remains is still at least of $70 to $80 billion in the US alone. So that's the market that we're going after. And you are absolutely right that currently only a fraction of this market actually is addressed. And Joel, do you want to share more about sort of the availability of behavioral neurologists and how we're addressing that shortage?
Yeah, there's only about 370 primary behavioral neurologists that specialize in this area, and I'm one of them. And if you try to look at kind of what the real need is out there, is one study looking at kind of this need across the country, and about half of the country is what's deemed as a dementia neurology desert, meaning that there's 10 or fewer providers for every 10,000 people who are affected by one of these conditions. And we have to kind of take the current number and multiply it by at least 100, not 125, to be able to meet that need. And so what we're trying to do here is take the capacity of one behavioral neurologist and scale that by at least 5 or more, so that way we can actually meet that need where it's at.
Yeah, and thinking about the market too, when we were going over the opportunity, there was kind of the two different markets. There's the group that have already been diagnosed that you can kind of provide treatment for, and then there's the market that is undiagnosed that could be diagnosed if they could only get a meeting to be diagnosed sooner. And so what you guys are doing is you're able to kind of effectively address both markets, ones that have already been diagnosed with it, as well as those that need to be diagnosed with it, or at least be diagnosed to see if they even have it. And remember that the math was pretty startling. To go back to your point about a 250 plus $1 billion global market, the way that we got to that number was kind of looking at roughly 55 million diagnosed cases globally, and roughly like the $5,000 in revenue per year per user. And so the thought was, you think of the lack of people that are actually even being diagnosed. It's pretty easy to kind of make an assumption that more than 50% of the cases are going undiagnosed, so that the market could significantly be larger than what it actually is today. And so if you just look at the US market, bring that down to roughly about 16 million diagnosed cases per year at $5,000 per revenue per user, gets you about $80 billion. And then when we were going even down to your core target, if you're just kind of getting, call it 100,000 customers, which is not a large number of people, and you're applying, like, call it $2,500 to $5,000, you're in the ballpark of 250 to 500 million in revenue with just 100,000 or so individuals. So what's fascinating is that the numbers get large really quickly from a revenue perspective, from even just a pretty small segment of initial people that are converting onto the platform. I guess, can you share a little bit? I remember there was one part of what you guys were doing that was fascinating, is that the ability to develop your own network of individuals doing the diagnosis. There's a challenge between, why is there this large wait? Why are the doctors not willing or interested in doing this? And what was that unique aspect of how you were able to develop a large network and a process that will continue to grow the network of individuals that are able to do the diagnosis? What was that kind of unique hack that you guys came up with for that?
Yeah, I think part of that is really finding ways that we can upskill people who are just at the cusp of being able to get that level of kind of detail in their evaluations or have some experience with populations. So, for example, taking an example of geriatricians who have experience before 65 and older, they have some kind of initial experience with people who are affected by cognitive disorders. And so what we're providing is the additional training plus kind of the assistance or the tech enablement, really, with rule-based decision making and the decision support that they need, so that way they can actually function at that level of a behavioral neurologist.
Yeah, it's interesting as you think of the how the world of telehealth has evolved. We've kind of taken a look at that, of dividing it into all of the different approaches for telehealth. And there's some platforms that have taken the generalist approach, where it's kind of a telehealth for everything, for generalists, and then they'll kind of redirect to specialists. There's telehealth for very specialized things, whether it's dermatology and things like that. With kind of how you guys were thinking of the telehealth play specifically for mental health is pretty interesting, because it's one of those spaces where you have a format of being able to use kind of camera and audio for doing something that's about the brain. So it's not as straightforward as, like, let me just see a camera and I'm a dermatologist and I can just use visual AI to maybe understand the skin condition you're having. You're dealing with people's brains and doing it through a telehealth solution. Walk me through a little bit what you guys have developed as the process of how you can actually effectively do diagnosis via a telehealth approach, as well as a treatment via a telehealth approach that's able to solve this, where people don't have to do it inside of a hotel, inside of a hospital, or a senior care facility. What did you guys come up with to kind of do that, the diagnosis and treatment virtually?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's quite unique about this medical specialty is that it kind of sits at the intersection of medical care and behavioral health, meaning that a lot of the evaluation can actually be done via telehealth. There are some elements that need to be translated, for example, from the neurologic exam into kind of being able to be done virtually. But I mean, there's been a lot of work showing that it's at least non-inferior to an in-person evaluation. And so part of kind of what we're doing that's quite unique is that we're taking the model of a center of excellence for Alzheimer's disease and other cognitive disorders and translating it completely virtually. So that way, the patients and families that are intersecting with us are getting this very comprehensive experience that's really well stitched together. So that way they feel as though they're kind of having that in-person visit with kind of care coordinators, the physician, the technicians that are doing the cognitive and behavioral assessments, as well as people who are doing some of these ancillary services that are only available at some kind of very few academic medical centers, like cognitive rehabilitation by a licensed speech language pathologist or even cognitive behavioral therapy. So we make the whole process as easy as possible, and we do that extra degree of facilitation to meet people where they're at. As Julie had mentioned, for people who are kind of uncomfortable with technology or may have lack of access to kind of a stable internet connection, we are bringing kind of these certified home health aides into the home with the right technology and getting them set up so that way all they need to do is open the door and have a seat.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of the business model that was, I guess, the right fit for this, how did you guys go about developing the business model in terms of finding something that is the right fit for, the patient, the facility that the patient's at, the insurer? If I remember correctly, it was in that ballpark of kind of like $2,500 to $5,000 of revenue per year. What was the process that you guys went through in making sure that you found, the business model fit the market, and it was something that would be adopted based on that logic?
Yeah, I mean, our research showed that it's really the payers that have the most interest in this, and that while some patients are clearly willing to pay for assessments and for the treatment, probably just it opens much more sort of the market share if we work with the payers. And so there is obviously the fee-for-service component of us just doing the medical services that are involved in the diagnosis and treatment. But there are also additional components of the service that are of financial interest to payers and also risk-bearing health systems, i.e. AECOs. And these include, first of all, the revenue and then the medical cost savings. For the revenue, just by diagnosing more patients with dementia, and on average, 61% of every population is undiagnosed in the US, so it's a significant proportion. Each of these new diagnoses actually give the payers additional revenue through the risk adjustment model. And then we are also able, through our care model, through delaying cognitive decline by anything between 3 months and 3 years, we're able to also delay sort of this high cost state of having dementia. And this really translates into lower ED admissions and lower hospital admissions, and therefore lower medical costs. And we're able to significantly reduce these costs by $3,000 to $4,000 per member per year. So overall, the payers really benefit both on their revenue and on the medical cost side, and this makes working with us a very attractive proposition.
Yeah, it's interesting from an ROI perspective. So they have the benefit of both higher revenues and lower costs. So it's like kind of a double whammy of a benefit. I guess when you were testing the market, obviously you guys have gone through pilots now. I guess what have you found from like an ROI perspective? What the math there that seems to be the most compelling, I guess, in terms of like an aggregate ROI when you combine the savings and the increase of revenue based on the price point. How did you guys find out, what's the right price kind of through that learning curve that you went through, of what is the target ROI that will provide a high conversion with the insurers?
Yeah, so we're looking at an ROI for payers of roughly 4 to 1 here. So we incur something in the order of 2,000 per member per year in cost, and the revenue is something in the order of 7 to 8,000. Obviously, there is this depends on several factors, but that's roughly what it boils down to.
Yeah, I think you find where it's always interesting. We have some founders that have pitched us in the past where they'll kind of say, we have, a 50 times ROI. And as a VC investor, one of our common comebacks that is like, I'm not sure you guys are charging enough. You're providing that much value that you might want to reconsider the business model. And I think when you think about the high dollar volume, whenever you start dealing with high dollar volume applications, I think you guys are in a great sweet spot of kind of a 3 to 4x plus range, where it's enough to kind of get conversion, and it's also where you're not becoming overly piggish at the same time. So I think it's a good balance, especially when you're dealing with such a huge dollar amount that moves their needle. So I'd say oftentimes if you're doing things where the needle is a lot lower of a mover, you need much higher ROIs. I think you guys have designed that really well, given the large dollar volume, where I think at the 3 to 4x plus is a great place to be. Well, the other thing I guess is interesting is that as the world continues to focus on solving dementia, Isaac Health has a long-term play here. Like, this is not something that is going to be going away. But share a little bit about the evolution. So as more biological or genetic treatments start developing, share kind of how Isaac Health is basically something that works with the evolution of the space. So it's not like one day dementia gets completely solved and then there's no longer a need for Isaac Health. I really like the fact that you guys had staying power in how it evolves with the evolution of as we kind of keep on technologically figuring out ways to improve dementia. It actually fits really well in line with overall Isaac Health's ability to also then service that treatment as well. But share a little bit about kind of going forth evolution of the industry and how Isaac is kind of there along the way, all the way through.
Yeah, one of the things that happened recently, so back in January, was this kind of accelerated approval of a disease-modifying drug that's amyloid targeting called lecanemab. And what's really unique about that drug is that it really served as an inflection point for a new drug that treats the biology of Alzheimer's disease to help slow decline, and that the field felt that they had confidence in this treatment. And I think we'll be seeing more and more of that over the course of the next several years. Alzheimer's disease is kind of in this phase of developing treatment, similar to what we saw previously with multiple sclerosis as well as with HIV. And where kind of Isaac really fits in there and kind of pairs along with the evolution is, as these new drugs have been kind of in the process of development, there's been a lot of concerns in the field that there aren't enough people to actually prescribe these medications and follow, especially when they may have some pretty serious side effects. The term that they use is called clinical readiness. And what Isaac really does is help to close the gap around that clinical readiness, because we're providing the specialty training and the specialty system that is able to do a lot of the kind of determination of eligibility, the initiation of therapy, and the close monitoring and follow up of these people, so that way they get these really unique treatments in a way that's as safe as possible for them, to help to improve those long-term medical outcomes.
Yeah, and maybe just to briefly add to that, I think Isaac Health has the advantage that we have a very flexible clinical model, so that we can always adapt as the best-in-class treatment modalities update, and so we will always go with the latest evidence, but also we hope to really play in the long term a role in shaping how these treatments get administered and which ones get developed through the data we collect, and so helping the environment as a whole, and the patients with this condition to make it a treatable condition.
Yeah, I think that's when we were looking at the long-term play for Isaac Health, what you guys have been developing and now scaling, it puts you guys squarely in the middle as being one of the most important ecosystem players from so many different angles, where you guys really position yourself at the center, I think, of where this industry is going, and put you kind of as a lock-in play for the long haul. It's interesting. We've been on our healthcare team. We've been spending more and more time on the longevity space, and looking into things around epigenetic reprogramming, of really trying to extend a human's health span and lifespan. And while there looks to be clear evidence that we've kind of unlocked a lot of the methodologies to make a variety of cells in the body younger, including the brain, as we go out another 15, 20 years, it will be interesting to see how the average age will be materially increased. But you want not just your physical body in good health, but you want your mental. Because it's not so great having a young body if your brain is mush and doesn't work so well. So you need both to be working well. And I think the need to have diagnosis, even if you could rewind the clock of all cells of the human body, by 10 or 20 years at a time, you're going to continually need the diagnosis to see when that needs to be treated again, and basically when you need to maybe turn on the epigenetic treatment to kind of bring you back another 5 or 10 years. And so I love the fact that this works, even as things develop, even with the best technology that's to be coming over the next 15, 20 years, you guys are going to play a really important role in helping to be prescribing and allowing for the prescription of some of the best solutions that are going to be coming out. But the need for Isaac Health never goes away, and really just becomes such a huge, important partner for the industry. In terms of, traction and kind of lessons learned, how we invested in you guys as part of the pre-seed seed round, pre-revenue. I wouldn't quite say completely pre-product, it was more pre-revenue. You guys were kind of at the trigger line of launching into the pilots when we initially invested in. As a pre-seed seed investor, though sometimes we do Series A, Series B as the entry point. Really, the conviction came from really massive market with a really innovative approach that can be that's capable of unlocking large amounts of revenue quickly. I guess since that point of time to now, where you guys are now going out to raise another round in the near future, what have you guys kind of learned so far, in that process, and how you guys are kind of thinking of scale? I remember, again, from a Thesis perspective, we liked that once you get this right and you have a few really good cases of pilots that go really well, and you start converting a larger number of a payer's patients, it becomes the blueprint that you can effectively start bringing to a large number of insurers. But what have been some of the core learning curves so far as you've gone through about how does this scale going forward?
Yeah, so indeed, I think we've come a far way over the past few months, and we've been lucky enough to confirm a few pilots that are now ongoing, and we're collecting some very useful data on this, on the cost savings, the reduction in ED admissions, the delay of cognitive decline, and also about patient happiness and satisfaction, where we see sort of very clear impact. For example, 92% of our patients are seeing an improvement against their cognitive goals within just 3 weeks. So I think these are all great data to now go out to the next wave of payers and health systems, and to scale up our product. And in terms of the learnings that we've made over the course of this time, I think we've learned a lot about what our clients really care about in terms of the numbers and metrics they want to see, to have the confidence that we can actually deliver the value that we're promising in terms of reduced medical costs, increased revenue, diagnoses. And so the data really helps with that. We've also learned a lot about how to scale this model, because what we are doing is truly unique and new. Nobody has done, for example, a population-based screening for dementia yet in an active population with a payer. So we've completed this, and yes, I think there's definitely learnings about how to reach out, how to increase engagement rate with patients. We've now managed to increase our engagement rate to 38%, which is, I think, higher than we initially hoped for. So that's great. And yeah, also on our internal operations, how to manage a population that's not just hundreds, but then potentially thousands of patients soon. So there's definitely learnings on how to automate many of the processes, how to support the doctors in a scalable way, and how to use technology to our advantage to make sure that we are delivering consistently high quality.
Yeah, I guess one advice that I would also share with other founders that are watching this, um, from a VC's perspective, given the high volume of pitches that we get, it's 90% guaranteed that when a founder pitches you, their 5-year projections are going to be 100 million. It's I think most founders are now like trained to make sure that the 5-year number is 100 million, no matter how rational or irrational that is for a market size or market penetration perspective. Just make sure it's at least 100 million. And what ultimately it ends up creating is a lack of reaction to when we see a company then that has projections of 100 million. I think what we do look for is when a company then presents opportunities that have the capability of meaningfully larger revenue potentials. Again, going after some of the most massive markets possible. Makes it significantly easier to hit bigger revenues faster, easier to raise future rounds of capital. All of that becomes easier when you're going after just a massive, massive opportunity. And again, directly for every 100,000 patients, in value being 250 million to 500 million in revenue, it's not inconceivable that you can ultimately blow through that number if you were to bring on payers that have 100,000 or multiples of the 100,000. So things can get really big really fast, which again, always a great thing from a venture investor's perspective, but also from a founder's perspective. In terms of kind of the future of where you guys are going, any kind of thought right now about in the short term, how you guys are thinking of growing, as well as kind of the longer term over the next 3 to 5 years? What are some of the core North Stars for you guys as you're going for how the company's going to grow and evolve?
Yeah, I think that the two main things that we'll be looking out for in the next 2 months and years is, first of all, growing our client base. So making sure that we partner with more and more payers and health systems and support them with the dementia care, and to actually bring this in the minds of the people and stakeholders that this is a solution that's available and a great way to support the patient population. And the second thing is the technology enablement. I think we really want to get to a stage that we get that polished and perfected so that there's just less of our involvement required, and that this is just something that can scale easily.
Yep. And then for last question, for advice for founders, I guess now that looking back on the last 12 months or so, from kind of launch, developing, launching, going through pilots, any kind of advice for early founders that are kind of in the pursuit of starting to think about their own opportunities, of thinking about how to identify massive opportunities, thinking about key nuances on execution, any kind of core advice that you'd have in real time as you're going through this, of looking back, anything that you would tell your younger self from 12 months ago to kind of help provide a little bit of guidance for folks that are at the early stages?
So, I mean, my two main points of advice, I think, sort of going back, are, first of all, it's worth doing the research, so talking to all the relevant people, really reaching out to the market and getting a very good sense of the dynamics. And the second thing is to actually, and this is something which maybe we could have done a little bit better in, is to really develop every expertise in-house first before you consider sort of going out there. And this for us is things like the payer billing, the sort of the building out the professional corporations, the legal infrastructure. I think you're just in a better shape if you build everything first yourself so that you understand how it all works.
Yeah, you know a lot more about what to look out for when you're again looking for outsiders, but know yourself from within first better. I agree with that. And then Joel, you had something?
I would just say to keep yourself as kind of flexible and adaptable as possible. Yeah, I think you have to make sure that whatever direction you're heading into the right direction. Otherwise, no matter how much fuel you put behind it and how quick you move, you'll be heading in the wrong direction. And so, as you with each step, just make sure that you're always evaluating and challenging against some kind of more objective criteria to determine whether or not you're heading in the right direction. You might need to adjust and adapt, and it all leads to just a greater improvement and really honing in on kind of what you're actually delivering.
Agreed. No, thank you for that. Well, again, thank you guys so much. It's been great to kind of be with Isaac Health from the very beginning of the raise that you guys did from the pre-seed seed round, and excited to continue to support you guys as you're going forward for the journey ahead. I think you guys are doing a lot of things right, and excited for the upcoming raise and what you guys have ahead of you. I think you have a really exciting future for the company that you guys are building. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.